Hello, everyone. Welcome to Word on the Streets. My name is Richard T. Streets. We have a guest I've been trying to get on this show for a long time now, Riley Talford, MA in Education, 15 years employee at Fresno County Probation Department. Fresno County's president of SEIU Local 521, also Fresno County Retirement Association Board Trustee. Riley, how you doing today, sir?
Thank you, Rich. I feel good. It's a pleasure being on your show today. Thank you.
Yes, love to have you on the show. Like I said, I've been trying to get you on the show for a while now. There's a lot I want to talk to you about, but like everything else, we're starting off right now with the things that's going on in our nation right now, with the injustices of blacks, right? And we'll get into that. We'll get into things that's going on within the county and some political endeavors with, our past and present president. So as a start, how's this, the injustices affecting you? What's your take on it? And what are some paths we should take to take care of this issue of racism?
Well, as you know, Rich, racial injustice, social injustice in this country, it goes back, hundreds of years. We just celebrated Juneteenth yesterday. Thank you for finally recognizing that in this country more so, giving it more prominent recognition throughout the country. But what black folks have to endure in this country goes back hundreds of years. And though we have made some strides or improvements as we've gone along, as we hear now in the year 2020, the injustices that we have suffered still continues in some ways, in that we are still looked at as a less class citizen compared to white Americans. We are considered a less class citizen to some. It doesn't matter about your social, economic background or what you do or things of that nature. It's just that when we go out into society, people just kind of view us differently, and of course it's not fair, and that's part of the problem that we're trying to rectify in this country. And that's highlighted more so, especially with law enforcement. As we look at the injustice, tragic loss of life for George Floyd, what happened there in Minnesota, those things that black folks have endured in this country for a long time, and it hasn't stopped. It just more so highlighted for people to see, hey, here's an officer kneeling on a black man's neck who's totally under control for 8 minutes while the man is pleading for his life. And and Mr. Floyd, as he feels his life passing away, he's calling for his mother, and it still does not move the passion of law enforcement to view him as a human being that's in need of attention or decency, or being treated with some respect and decency.
Right.
So that is really what helped propel this to the forefront, and it awakened the nation to the racial injustice that black folks or minorities have also faced from law enforcement. But it's not just law enforcement, because we know that we face this type of injustice even in society, as far as banking institutions, be it career paths, jobs, and things
Right.
of that nature. It doesn't matter. We face injustice all the time. And it's about time that this country starts to seriously take a look at what is being done and how do we begin to correct it and move forward and heal as a country. Unfortunately, we have the wrong person in office that's not helping in this debate and all. Trump, I don't call him President Trump. I'm sorry if that offends anybody, but with somebody who acts the way he does, he's not a presidential person that has the well-being of an entire country at his beck and call. He doesn't care about the country as a whole. So you cannot call him everyone's president, because he is not.
Right. Knowing the position you have for Fresno County, you deal with some of our most vulnerable clientele, adolescents, right?
Yes.
And being of a administrative position, I know that sometimes you have to, not sometimes, all the time, you have to police your own workforce.
Correct.
And I think that's something that that's missing. You know, we know who are the bad apples, and we do not acknowledge that or take care of that situation, so things of this nature won't happen like what happened to, you know, George Floyd. So within your realm and your experience, is that something that's really on the forefront, is to police your own when it comes to bad apples in your department or whatever the case may be?
You know, policing your own definitely has its own, you know, responsibility that comes with it. But I don't think that, you know, enough is done when they say police your own, because police your own really does not give accountability to what occurs when the public is not watching.
Right.
When the public's not watching, you know, folks that are in law enforcement are hired and they're being given the public trust to use that public trust and perform their duties in a professional manner and giving all citizens dignity, regardless of their circumstances. Right. It doesn't matter their social or economic background or their makeup. It doesn't matter of their ethnicity. It doesn't matter how rich you are, how poor you are. Everyone should be treated with the same level of dignity, no matter what. Whether you're incarcerated, not incarcerated, it doesn't matter. You should be treated the same way. However, when the camera's turned off, and even some occasions when the camera's still turned on, some folks have gotten that sense of entitlement that, you know, I'm the law, or I'm better than you because of this badge, or because of this trust bestowed upon me, that I'm better than you, that I can pretty much do whatever I want to do with impunity without, you know, worrying about so much happening. Now, we know that every law enforcement agency has its accountability boards, or they have their review boards and things of that nature, or their IAs, their internal affairs and things of that nature. We know they have them, but unfortunately, sometimes those IAs are sometimes politicized. In other words, they'll, you know, take myself for example, you know, be the fact that I'm an activist and a union leader, things of that nature. I would be treated with more scrutiny for just a more minor thing that they would look to say, okay, how could we shut him up, or how could we lower his status or his profile? Whereas opposed to someone else who can do something with more gravity can probably just be overlooked,
Right.
you know, or brushed aside, or it's maybe just a little slap on the wrist.
Right.
And I've seen this over and over again. You know, I've had throughout my career, I've had the opportunity to work in a few different departments, and I've seen this trend portrayed over and over and over again. As I've represented, as being a union official and representing members, I've seen this portrayed over and over again as well with race as well. So when we get back to the topic of law enforcement, and I don't want to bag law enforcement. No way. I'm like, these calls to defund the police and things of that nature, I think that I understand where people are saying defund the police and things of that nature, but do they mean get rid of the police? No. No. I'm like, I don't want to live in a lawless society just like anybody else. If something's happening in my neighborhood, or if I'm assaulted, or my car is stolen, I'm like, what am I supposed to do? Just chalk it up? That was you know, chalk it up to the game, as we say. Right. You know, no. I'm like, I want some type of response. That's what we need for just society to occur, is to actually have some form of checks and balances. But we need those checks and balances to be just. Now, when you start having folks that are acting unjust and they're not being held accountable, then that's where we have the problem. And unfortunately, this is what we're having in this country today. I was just reading an article today. I believe this article was by the New York Times, or the Washington Post, forgive me, where they're talking about since 2015, there's been over 5,000 police killings of civilians, be it armed, unarmed, what have you. And those are not all black folks. You know, I'd be amiss to say they're all black folks. I'm like, black folks make up, I want to say maybe about 15 to maybe 20% of the population here in the United States. So one of the studies showed is that, white folks are being killed by police too. Sometimes armed, sometimes unarmed. However, that black folks are being killed at a much higher rate, even though they represent a smaller portion of the community. So that right there is a problem. And as I see folks that make an issue about saying Black Lives Matter, or oh, well, all lives matter. Yeah, of course we know that all lives matter, but Black Lives Matter, we're putting focus on that, hey, you're being disproportionate with your treatment towards black people. You have an intense focus on black people. And unfortunately, in law enforcement, we need to have reforms that put some checks and balances in those things and look at things such as arrest rates, shootings, incarceration rates. Those things really need to be looked at and studied, and I think there should be some national attention given to that. And I don't think that protest or peaceful protest should stop until it's done, until we actually have some real reform in this country that says, hey, it is not okay to do this. It is not okay to victimize a community. It's not okay to put extra law enforcement presence in a community and you're not doing anything to bring about any real change in the community. So such as you say, hey, we want to put extra police presence in this neighborhood because of drug activity. Okay, are you breaking down the nature of the drug activity? What's behind the drug activity? Who's profiting from the drug activity? Where are the drugs coming from that come into the community? Are you targeting those things? Are you going out and making sure, giving people opportunities for jobs, good education?
Right.
Are you giving that? Are you giving them access to affordable health care? Are you doing the things that matter in people's lives that where drugs is not something that they're interested in? Because the bottom line is, just like anything else, they're going to gravitate to what they can do, what they can afford, what they can get away with. Drug dealers are going to operate because they can get money from wherever they're operating. You take away their source of being able to get money because you give people access to jobs, health care.
Right.
I mean, with living wage jobs, not just a job, but living wage jobs. Access to education that gets them out of any situation, let them know that they can achieve whatever they want to in this society. And they're going to be judged just as equal as the white person that's sitting across from them or in the county or whatever further over or in the rich part of town.
Right.
So those type of things that are matter and those type of things that we need to do. But just to get back to the immediate question about law enforcement that you asked, that yes, enough is not done in regards to policing their own, because policing their own, as we see, it does not work.
Right.
It's sad to say it does not work because, unfortunately, a lot of times it is also too politicized.
Too politicized, right. You being the Fresno County Chapter President of SEIU Local 521, and I'm going to say more often than probably you want, you deal with the Board of Supervisors a lot. I know, due to COVID-19, we have, it was a setback, and it's the forthcoming sees a economic downfall, and along with that, these social injustices. Has there been talks with the board, or have the board came forward and addressed? Well, I'll start from the front with the social injustices of minorities or black people. And have you had any dialogue with the Board of Supervisors, or have they came out and made a public statement or anything of that nature of this?
This is, unfortunately, from our board, they have not come out and made any public statement in regards to calling out racial injustice in this country. And, it needs to be brought to them more so. Myself, due to the COVID-19 pandemic, they were not having in-session board meetings, which I think they just resumed those for the last session, which I'm going to make an appearance there, just to make sure that they understand that, hey, where are you, Fresno County, in regards to calling out racial and social economic injustice within Fresno County, within our immediate community?
Right.
We've had Fresno PD come out, or the city of Fresno come out and say something.
Right.
Fresno County, what are you saying and what are you prepared to do? Now, one of the first things, of course, they can do is right now that, as the state government is saying that they're like, $54 billion in the hole and things of that nature, and the governor just released his budget, if you will, that was passed, but even though they still may make revisions as we go along, what are they going to do to ensure that racial and social injustice is not occurring within the communities, not just for our black communities, but for our Latino communities, our Hmong communities? What are you going to do to ensure that they are not left behind in this economy as we start to make a comeback from COVID-19, which we all know has not ended yet? It's still here and it's still present within the community. And Once again, I hate to keep harping on the Trump thing. We have a president that downplays it, that it's nothing, it's going to go away, it's going to die away, but yet we see rising cases here within our own community. So what are they going to do? We're SEIU local 521, our Fresno County chapter was our SEIU local international, are pushing to ensure that, hey, don't leave everyone behind again. That happened during 2011, during the budget cuts, if you will, and they left communities behind, communities of color, black and brown folks, traumatic job loss, or what was done to make them whole. I'm like, as you look in the county, they cut county employees, they cut the salaries of county employees, cut county employees, a lot of those serving our populations, our most vulnerable populations. So we're calling for them to make investment. How can they make investment? The investment has to come first from the federal government. We're pushing everyone, anyone that's on this call, to please call your congressman, call your senator. Actually, the Congress has already passed the HEROES Act. We need the Senate to pass the HEROES Act, and give some relief back to the states so that they can get back down to the counties and cities that rely on the assistance to provide for its community. And it's usually our communities where we have the most vulnerable citizens that need the most help or assistance. So we're pushing for them not to make cuts, but to make investment. They can make investment various ways, but at the end of the day, we do not want to see anybody left behind.
Right, I understand that. And the citizens of Fresno County and the employees of Fresno County need to understand this also.
Yes.
This is a very important situation. And become more, how would you say, involved?
I can't overstress the importance of employees being involved in what happens in the civil discourse, because when you're left out and you just kind of leave it to somebody else or say, well, they'll figure it out, whatever, you don't take any personal accountability. A lot of our jobs and what we do is funded by, the citizens, taxpayers. There's folks that rely on the things or the services that we perform. So we can't take those things for granted and think somebody else is going to do it. Because the more we stay silent, we don't say anything, we don't talk to our local government, we don't talk to our state government or our federal government, or go out and vote in elections. I mean, that's just another topic, because, for me, I've been a lifelong voter for the longest. Ever since I had the right to vote at 18, and understanding as a black person what it meant for me to be able to have that opportunity to vote, I have never, ever taken that for granted, that, hey, I have a right to vote. So I believe that it's my duty to vote. And, and I don't do the bashing of, oh, they're not going to do anything, so why vote? They're not going to do anything. I was like, what am I doing? Am I calling anybody? Am I holding somebody accountable for what their words, what they say they're going to do? Am I talking to my neighbor about, hey, we don't have our streets fixed? Why are we dealing with cracked streets? This person said they were going to run to ensure that our streets are fixed, but yet when I look at their voting record or the things they bring up, this is never discussed. We need to get somebody else. Those are the type of discussions that need to happen, instead of thinking that somebody else is going to fix it or nobody's going to do anything. We have to first do for ourselves, and we have to be involved in the political discourse in this country in order to make the changes that we need. I'm like, and I hate to get off into politics so much, but another thing that comes up sometimes that I hear is like, oh, Barack Obama was the first African-American president in this country, but he didn't do anything for black people. I'm like, you know what? That is just such an unfair statement. He was not elected to be the president of black people. He was elected to be the president of the United States for the entire country. And ensuring that things are done for the fairness of all citizens, and ensuring that black folks are treated fairly in this country as well, too. So there's a bunch of reforms that he did to help the average black person, the average Hispanic person, Latino person, the Asian person in this country. There are so many things that he did to move things forward for us as a country, and that's the way it's supposed to be. So you're not judged by your race or the color of your skin, but the content of your character and what you are doing. And I am so proud for the time that he led this country, himself and the First Lady Michelle Obama, because there are so many things that they did. Everything doesn't have to be a big, grand, in-your-face type thing. It's the small things sometimes that matter.
Right.
That makes the difference in our everyday lives. And, I'm willing to have that conversation with anybody about, say, what did he do? What are some of the things he did? I say, hey, I can go back and give you a list of the accomplishments, and you actually go back and take a look at what happened. It's like, for anybody that was a homeowner, for example, in 2011, what happened during 2011? The big stock crash,
right?
From the inflated adjustable rate loans and things of that nature, where they were just pumping money into the system, and they were sucking money out. So you had these inflated mortgages that were not the mortgages. The houses that were supposed to back these mortgages were not worth the value. So I'm like, we had homes here in Fresno, average homes that were $600,000,
yeah,
$500,000. So I'm like, for a $100,000 house, but people taking money out, and when it crashed, people were losing their homes.
Right.
Who started HARP? People don't think about that. That was a President Barack Obama's thing, to allow people to be able to keep their homes. And to stay in their homes and keep it affordable, even though everything that happened. He brought reform to Wall Street to keep these crooks from doing that to us, to improperly inflating values of things, just to rob us of money, robbing pension funds and things of that nature of money. These things affect us. You and I are going to be retirees one day, so I thank you for that. So that way that my pension fund was not sucked dry by Wall Street, and I can hopefully retire one day, and and I can still live averagely. I'm not going to be a rich fat cat, but I can still take care of myself pretty well. So these are the type of things that were done under President Obama. When he came into office, I think about, we were in a recession. We were in a really bad recession. We were in recession for a few years when he took over, from the Bush era tax cuts and things of that nature. He ended wars. He brought us back from the recession. I'm thinking about the cash for clunkers. I mean, a lot of the folks that probably bought cars through that time or got rid of their car. That was President Obama's deal again, to save the auto industry, the cash for clunkers. And all of a sudden we had new growth or renewed growth within the auto industry, and made them become better at what they do at their craft. And a lot of folks were able to get rid of junk cars and get better cars. But these are just little smaller things that we can talk about. But there's a whole list of things he did to ensure that the rights were afforded to all Americans, as opposed to, would have been good if he maybe came and did things for just black folks himself. Yeah, great. But what happens when you have somebody just do something that's so one-sided?
We see it now.
The next person comes in, and I'm going to undo everything you did.
Right.
When there was no movement, no call for it. Like right now, it'd be a perfect time to have a president that'll push for reparations for black people in this country, for what was promised to black people at the end of slavery hundreds of years ago, that never came to pass.
Right.
The 40 acres and a mule, that they talk about. But there's ways to make reparations to black folks today. And it should be something real. It should be a real discussion. It should, I love to have a politician running on that and say, yes, I support this. This was my plan. This is what I want to do. But could Barack Obama do that back in 2011 when he was being the first African-American president? No, because if he would have been what? A one-term president.
Yeah.
You already had them trying to get him out of there all the time.
Yeah, when he stepped in, they was trying to get
They were
him
already
out.
targeting him all, so if he just came in just trying to do things just for black people, then he would have been ostracized for that, and they would have found some way to try to get him out of there just for that.
Right.
But instead of, helping black folks by bringing up everybody and ensuring that black folks are treated and given the respect and dignity they need. I think that was, during his administration, was one of the times you had the most, diverse administrations in the history of this country. These are the type of things that we should not take for granted, and I wish that people would really understand and take a look at what was accomplished, what was done, and how were their lives during that time period. So that's my spiel. I can talk about that forever. But
do you see, and I think we might have covered this, do you see this happening in our near future with the economic downfalls? That's in the, that's what we're talking about, right? The governor say, hey, we're going to be in a deficit. We need to take care of this from the beginning and work out a plan, like you stated. Invest in your future, invest in your employees, right?
Correct.
Instead of making cuts.
Correct.
Right? So that's a great campaign, and I want everyone to know out there need to be involved with that campaign, because it's real. There's proposed cuts, but we're pushing for invest in our
renewed investment.
Yeah.
Yes, a renewed investment.
Right.
No one
In our
should be left
employees.
behind. No one should be losing jobs and things of that nature. It's like when you cut, what happens? There's a retraction.
Right.
There's no growth. There's a retraction. People are struggling to find jobs. They need assistance. They need that helping hand to get back on their feet, to tide them over until they can get to something. Ensuring that they still have access to affordable education, affordable health care, so they don't start to fall in between the cracks. And because, as I talked about a little bit earlier in regards to, let's say you don't have access to affordable health care, then people turn to whatever they can find. And unfortunately, that's the stuff they find in the streets, and that's not helping them. Only thing that does is drag them further down in a hole, which affects our entire community. So they have to make investments and understand that you make investment means growth. You plant a seed, what happens? It grows.
Water and grow. Yep.
Water and grows.
Right.
That's it.
I see. Also, you're involved with the Retirement Association.
Yes. I can't overspeak the importance of ensuring that we have minority representation on retirement boards, that the interest of everyone, minorities, everyone, is accounted for. Some things that I've seen just from my short term on the retirement board, and I am up for election again, so if you're listening or if you know a Fresno County employee, just understand that the FSERA election for the seat that I hold right now, which is seat 3, is coming back up again. Ballots will be going out for those, I believe, July 27th. But in regards to that, one of the things that I saw is I saw how management has extra perks kind of built into the retirement plan.
Oh, yeah.
It's like and I'm like, wow. I'm like, I wish I could have an extra perk built into the retirement plan for maybe something. It's like me. I work overtime because I just work hard. Anybody that knows me, I work all the time.
Right.
But yeah, it would be great if I had overtime that built into my pension. But because I'm a worker, I'm just a regular worker. No, that's not in there. But you know what? If I had some other management type perk, as a perk for me being a manager or director or department head,
Right.
that's kind of factored into my retirement. So, for example, I could be paying for current director or department head to have a cell phone when they're retired. So I'm like, and if you ask the average citizen that, say, what? Why the heck would you be paying for a cell phone for somebody that's retired? I say, yeah, that is a good question.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
But the perks don't end there. It's little perks like that. So, ensuring that we have folks that say, that's not right. When those type of things come up, and say, no, that's not good. And shedding light. And one thing I'll do, and I've shown myself to do, I'll shed light on anything that's not right, period. I'm like, hey, this is not right. Let's go and talk about this in the open. We're not going to do anything behind closed doors. People need to know what's happening, what's going on, what you're sitting up here trying to decide, and I'm out here to speak against it. So.
Right. All right. What other adventures are you looking at in the future?
Well, I still got some work life to go, but as I talk about representation, I look here within our own city here and county within Fresno, and I don't know, Rich. I wasn't born and raised in Fresno. Sorry. I was born and raised in New York. I'm a New Yorker, born and raised in New Yorker.
So. But, New York, Jersey, something like that.
California has been my home. Fresno has been my home here
right.
for, ever since I started working for the county. So going on close to about almost 20 years now. I'm like, man, time goes by fast.
Right.
But however, during my time, I have not seen one minority person, one black person, one person of color in charge of the city or the county of Fresno this entire time. So I like to make a change to that. So I do plan on running for the Board of Supervisors eventually. I'm hoping that the current incumbent, I kind of have good communication with, and he's been fair. I'm like, he still leans a little bit to the right. Well, he leans to the right. He's a Republican, which is fine. But myself being an independent, I still like to represent black folks, minority groups, within this city and county on that board of supervisors. So my time is going to be coming soon, and I do plan on making a run for the board of supervisors.
Oh, that's great. That's great. That's great to hear. You have a great track record. I mean, being president of SEIU Local 521, I know you're dealing a lot with that. Being on the Phagnasay board, I know that's wealth of information, and you make changes to our to the pensions of employees of Fresno County. Now back to what we were talking about at the beginning of this conversation, the Black Lives Matter. I know we're having these peaceful protests, but are you involved with any of the groups that's meeting with the Fresno City, City of Fresno leaders or Fresno County leaders, or have anyone approached you on being on any one of those?
You know, which is funny. I had a conversation just with one colleague of mine that's you know, he's involved somewhat within the county and the city. Well, the city more so than the county. But yeah, I have not had an opportunity to join anybody's coalition that's working with the city or the county in regards to enacting change. But my job is to try to push on, or to get some legislation on the ballot, if it's not done at the national level, to actually bring some reform within law enforcement. I mean, I think it needs to be done. There needs to be some real accountability. And the way you have accountability, you got to have it twofolds. For one, you know, you need to have some sort of citizen review committee for police shootings. I know the thought about it is that, well, they don't understand law enforcement. They can't, you know, they're not good judges of what occurs and things of that nature. But it's like, well, it doesn't take too much of rocket science to understand that if somebody doesn't have a weapon and they're running away from you and then you shoot them and kill them, that where was the danger at? I'm like, you know, from my time growing up in this country, you know, one thing that I used to think about with law enforcement that I learned is that, you know, it was a time that an officer had to actually be in danger. You know, somebody had to have pulled a weapon and put that officer's life in jeopardy, which justified the use of force. Well, somehow over the years, this got watered down. So where I thought he had a weapon, but he was reaching for his waistband, or he had his hands in his pocket. That now is justification for murder, for killing civilians.
Right.
And this is the things I talk about. And people like, well, they go to court and they get found innocent. Well, why are they being found innocent? Oh, because what judges are sitting on those panels? I mean, what judge is adjudicating that case to see, hey, is the law being followed? Is the law being applied? Do we need to change the law? Do we need to make some changes to say, hey, you know what, we got to have some accountability for law enforcement. Yeah, we want peace officers to be safe. I want every officer to be out there safe. I don't want to see any officer lose their life in the line of duty. But likewise, I don't want to see an officer kill somebody that was not a real threat to them. Right. You know, and being a threat, I mean, I expect for somebody to be a threat. You're coming at me. You're coming towards me with a verified weapon in your hand that can kill me if you got too close and you didn't stop. You know, but people running away from you and somebody holding a cell phone and things of that nature, all these crazy justifications, rationalizations being made to justify police killings, it has to change in this country because it is being shown over and over again in these studies that black people are being disproportionately the victims of police or law enforcement killings of civilians. It is. I'm like, yeah, they may shoot other groups, white folks. They are shooting them too, and they don't get that much press, but it's not happening at nearly the rate
record pace
of black people.
Right.
You know, period.
Right.
And the bottom line, they're still given more leeway. I'm like, I was just reading something on it, or I saw it on the news, I guess it was a few weeks ago, about the mass murderer that went in there and shot up a church or shot up some people or killed some people, and how police, you know, brought him into custody. Was able to, after a manhunt, they were able to get him into custody.
Right.
I'm like, had that been, you know, you or me, would we have got that same treatment? I doubt it. I just highly doubt it. You know, not unless cameras are there and they're on top of the scene. I just don't think that'll happen. You know, so, but yeah, I want to push for real reform within law enforcement. So, you know, it's my plan to Anybody that's willing to work with me on getting a petition assigned so we can get something on the next electoral ballot. It's too late to get it for this 2020 election, but for the next ballot cycle, which will happen in 2021,
Right.
There's a bill that can come out to do something. Trump tried to quiet people by coming out with a very weak presidential signature of some police reforms for training. Training does nothing. Training does, it's something you went to and that's the end of it. And in other words, you're back to business. But chokeholds, is it appropriate for those to be banned? All right, in law enforcement. Let's have that discussion. If it's something that needs to be banned, if we're saying that it's not really an effective tool or it's being disproportionately applied, let's get rid of it.
Right.
But let's really have that discussion on it. Should we rotate officers out of patrol divisions that have had multiple incidents of shootings or multiple complaints of
Right.
harassment, and if it's being disproportionate to minority groups, black people, Hispanic people, what have you, black and brown, get them off the streets, assign them to another type of position. So yeah, I'm not trying to attack unions, being a union official myself, and I understand about union rights and things of that nature, but sometimes you have to do things that's in the best interest of the community as a whole. And you have to have those discussions and willing to make moves on those things. Being the fact that, I've seen a lot of things, and being the fact I've been in law enforcement, I'm somebody I would love to share in that conversation. Let's have that real discourse, and how can we best solve it? But it can't be solved with just training, because training does not hold anybody accountable. Year after year, police shootings stay the same, and they're getting training.
Right.
They're being investigated, but it still happens. But until you start to hold people accountable, it's like, I was having a discussion with somebody today. It's like, well, I still don't think it was right that, they arrested that officer that killed, I forgot the gentleman's name, in the Wendy's parking lot for the DUI.
Oh, yeah.
I still don't think it was right that they fired him. Yeah, he deserved it, but I don't think he should have got fired the next day. I'm like,
What should have happened?
I'm like, well, why not? I'm like, why not? I'm like, it's clear as day. He's going to get his due process. He's going to get his due process. He's still going to be afforded the same rights, but it's a strong statement by that department to say you're fired right now. You're fired. Yeah, we're going to investigate it. We'll look at it. You can do your due process, things of that nature. And if for some reason it shows that maybe what you did was right, which I don't see that in a million years, but you'll get your job back.
Right.
You're going to get your job back.
Right.
So there's due process involved, but people should not wait for that to happen. It's like a Breonna Taylor, that got killed in her own home. That was how long ago that occurred? Well, the officer that started the fire, he just finally got fired by his department. He just got fired. So they took the time and investigated everything, and now they move forward with firing.
Move forward with
As opposed to like, no, you look at everything, you know what? This looks very, this is beyond questionable what you did. Your actions go be outside of what our department calls for and things of that nature. You're fired. You have your due process rights and things of that nature, but for right now, you are fired. That sends a strong message to someone, say, hey, you have to think about what you're doing. If you're doing something and it's not right, it's like I was watching a video that finally surfaced of the young lady that got arrested, pulled out of her car for a traffic stop. This was a few years ago. I believe this was in Texas, I believe. She got pulled out of her car for a traffic stop, and she wound up dying later in custody. She hung herself, and it was just for a regular traffic stop.
Yes, I recall.
And did you watch that video? She was like, asking questions. What am I being pulled over for? What are you telling me? Just get out of your car. I'll light you up. I was like, whoa, wait a minute.
Where'd that come from?
Where'd that come from?
Right.
I'm like, you'll light me up,
Right.
get out of my car, and you won't even tell me what you're stopping me for? That's insane. That's absolutely insane. So those type of things need to be investigated. Those officers who are crossing the line, instead of just being, hey, if it's clear that they crossed the line, fire them. Give them their due process. If it's investigated fully and determined that, hey, okay, all right, you get your job back. But you know what? The public, your coworkers, and everybody know that we're not tolerating this here in this department. And if people know that, that starts to bring back some trust of the community, that people are going to be treated fairly, and officers that are rogue or doing things on their own or doing things that's crooked or foul, they're going to be dealt with immediately. Instead of, well, we're going to investigate, we're going to look at it, and I mean, in clear cases where, wait a minute, you were way outside the lines on this.
Right.
You should have had the privilege of somebody lost their life. That they, somebody lost their husband or their mother, their son, their daughter, their child. That ain't coming back.
No.
And we're talking about your job, whether or not you're still gonna get paid. If you get fired, what's going to happen anyway? You're still gonna get paid. Whether you draw unemployment and things of that nature. Not only that, if you were wrongfully terminated, you can sue and make money. But that life is never coming back.
Never coming back.
Never coming back, and you can't put a cost on that.
Right.
You can't put a cost on human life.
Right.
So if being fired is the most you're going to suffer right then and there, well, yeah, I'm all for it. Be fired.
I hear you.
Be fired.
All right. Riley Talford. We have Riley Talford, Fresno County Chapter President, SEIU Local 521, Fresno County Retirement Association Board of Trustee, and 15 years of Fresno County Probation Department. Thank you for coming on Word on the Streets. Hopefully we can have you back. Everyone heard that he has future endeavors, so make sure you look out for him. There's a election coming up for the Board of Trustees seat, correct?
Yes, it is.
So let's make sure we tune into that. For all employees of Fresno County, please be in tune what's going on within your departments, and stay tuned. Keep in touch with SEIU Local 521 to know what's going on with budget and the future of your careers. All right. So this is Richard on Word on the Streets. Thank you, Riley, for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me, Richard.
This was by Mad Talk TV show. Thank you. Have a good day.
Happy Father's Day, everybody.